All right,
We're going.
all right.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean.
I'm Jen.
Itzik?
We have Itzik here. Wow. So, okay, I want to ask you a question right off before we really get started.
Oh no.
When will we see you rocking the kilt? Is that in
I
our future?
I somehow doubt it. But you never know.
It would be a good show of community spirit.
Right. You know, I don't want to rule out anything, so.
Always keeping your options open.
Well said. Well said.
He's not just randomly asking. It's sequel kilt day for those of you who
Yeah.
aren't here.
Yes. That wasn't just a
Yeah,
random
what's
question.
more interesting is Sean's kid.
Yeah.
See him. I got it. So I'm gonna say, okay, this is gonna be the only ass kissing portion of the show. I promise.
Okay.
Everybody has been exploding about your session today. I mean, I have heard nothing but random talk on the escalators and Twitter and just in conversations. Everybody has just been exploding about your sessions, and I think the thing that gets them, I don't know why it's hitting them so hard this year, right? But everybody is talking about what an incredibly polished and gracious speaker you are, and it's really, I don't know why it's hit everybody this year because he speaks all the time, right?
No, it's really easy. It's, how many people were there?
Oh gosh, a couple, 200-300 maybe.
Yeah, so you know, $10 each.
Fair enough.
$1,000.
That's what I've been doing wrong all this time.
Not that hard.
So Whisper
No.
Campaign is
Yeah.
what you're doing this year. Man, I gotta try that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
I attended that session. I really liked it, and I was one of the ones saying that it's nice. It's nice to watch you work and go. See, we're almost done with the ass kissing portion, but yeah. How long have you been a speaker?
Probably.
My whole life.
I was too.
No, but I would say probably 8 years or so.
Only 8 years.
Something like this, yeah. I mean, I started teaching about 10 years ago, I guess. No, more than that. Since 98, so we're talking about 13, 14 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, done with the ass kissing part. Probably.
Yes.
Probably. So what you got?
Mostly. Yeah, I didn't
And
get
that's
to
our
go to your
show.
session today. I was on shift at one of the booths during that time.
Because
So
I
I was,
didn't pay you, I know.
yeah. You didn't see me in time.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, that's the. And I haven't been to any sessions this week yet. It's a shame, but I've been doing stuff all along. The noise out there is really disturbing me. So if we can jump into topics real quick. I mean, you don't get Itzik without talking to him about something T-SQL, right? So, would you be so kind as to explain to us? We're talking Denali features now, okay?
All right, yeah.
Which is no longer Denali.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Well,
Not
Well, it's
allowed
still-
to say it
No,
anymore.
no, why? Code name is still the name.
I know. I'm being,
Official name.
I'm being
Yeah.
hilarious.
just because they've decided to change something different, that's all right.
That's probably my email.
No, that's our Italian friend, Davide. Davide, when you see this
Way to
video,
be. You've ruined the show.
you've ruined the show.
I know.
Really
now it's
inconsiderate,
going on.
David.
Now we've got to refund money.
Silent. It's silent.
Mine's not on silent.
Well, then you're going to ruin the show too.
Yeah.
Mine was that.
Who calls me?
Okay,
So
so
Denali, I guess Denali is still appropriate, but
yeah.
It is to me. I still call the other one Shiloh, and you know,
Right.
so I mean, you know.
And
whatever.
everybody looks at you funny when you say Vista.
So, can you explain to us what windowing functions are, and what is the big deal with all of this? I mean, what does that term mean, a windowing function?
right.
And,
So, well, first of all, the connection to Denali is that Denali introduces these, very profound functions called windowing functions or window functions, and the basic idea is that there's lots of calculations in the language that operate on sets of values. So you take a set, you apply some calculation, like an aggregate. It's a classic kind of calculation that you apply to a set. And so far, the more, let's say, traditional, classic kind of constructs that allow you to do this have all kinds of restrictions or limitations. Like group queries, once you group data, you're kind of forced to apply all of your calculations in the context of those groups.
Right.
yeah.
So you know, you want to do group by customer and give me a bunch of aggregates, but then you can't go back to the detail rows anymore. You
Right.
must do all of your calculations in the context of those kind of rigid groups. And often we do need to involve in our calculations both aggregates or in general set calculations as well as detail elements, like computing the percent of some value out of a customer total or a grand total. Subqueries are another option there. So you can take a detail element like a value from an order and then divide it by, and in the subquery go and ask for the aggregate against this set. But then subqueries, they kind of start from a fresh view of the data as opposed to whatever is the underlying query's result set. And often in your subqueries you do want to take the underlying query's result set and further restrict it. So anything you have in the underlying query you basically have to repeat, in the subqueries. So it involves a lot of additional coding basically. Some optimization issues also with subqueries. So window functions are essentially just another way or another concept that allows you to take a set and apply calculation against the set, but without being bounded by all of those restrictions that we have in the more classic kind of constructs. Right. So you take a set calculation like an aggregate. There are many others, but an aggregate is a kind of example is easy to relate to. And then you say, I'll define a set of rows very specific to that function, and not impose the same kind of set organization on the rest of the computations of the query. So a window is just another term for a set, in a way. Right. So we have a set calculation, we define a window of rows for the set to work with, and a whole bunch of elements in the window specification that define exactly which set of rows to work with. So for one, the set is very specific to each function, so you can have a detail element, and then a function that is applied to very specific set, and then involve another function that is applied to a different set. So unlike grouped queries, each function gets its own set to work with. And unlike subqueries, the starting point for the window basically to work with is the underlying query's result set. So it's already been through all of the table operators, filters, and so on and so on. So anything you basically put in the window specification are different ways to restrict the window, but your starting point is already the underlying query's result set. So I would say window functions are a concept that allows set calculations to work with the set in a much, much more flexible way and more kind of intuitive way, basically, compared to older classic constructs in the language. Right. And also another key thing is that there are many SQL constructs that the way they get optimized is with not so good optimization, because it's hard for the optimizer sometimes to figure out that what we're doing could be done in one pass over the data and so on.
Right, you're making multiple passes, going back to the same tables again and again to get basically the same
data. Probably the most classic, kind of corny example, but there's a reality here, is a running total, where computing a running total using classic constructs like subqueries or joins involves rescanning the data many times, because the SQL Server database engine doesn't look at the query that does a running total and say that's a running total. All it sees is a subquery that keeps asking for the rows from the very beginning of that whatever, account, customer, employee, until the current row, and keeps kind of rescanning data. And with window functions, the way they are designed, they kind of lend themselves to very simple and efficient optimization. So performance, simplicity, flexibility, and my belief is that in a few years, when people start working with those window functions, they will realize that they solve basically a very wide variety of problems in a much more efficient and easier way than the traditional constructs. So we will all basically use them all over the place in our code. That's what I feel.
And the over and partition by it's a windowing kind of thing with row number. Yeah. That when that was introduced, that was a really big deal for me, for the simple reason of being able to number things within a row set without having to pull it into without having to pull it into like a temporary table
or use subqueries
or anything else. So that's one of the things that I like to teach. It's one of the things I'm really excited about. Right. And I love when I teach it, every once in a while, when I explain it, and I'll explain that exact same thing, that it's basically you're being able to do aggregate queries on a row set without having to group it. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody out there go, that look, you've got to get that look quite a lot in your sessions.
I do too, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing.
That's cool.
Maybe it's a kilt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But with row number is an excellent example that it's another kind of calculation. When you assign a row number, it's not alone. It's always in respect to some other rows. Right. So that's another example for a set calculation. and we assign row numbers or ranking values in general in respect to other rows in the same window partition, basically. So that's another classic example for a window function, just associated with ranking computations. But ranking, aggregates, offset, distribution, there are lots of kinds of calculations that fit the idea of a set. I need a calculation against a set and get back a scalar value. So I think there will be more and more and more of those. It's interesting to look at the standard SQL specs and see how much text is dedicated there nowadays to the window functions concept.
Right.
Very, very big chunk.
That's something that you've been lobbying for quite a while. You've got Connect tickets and all that. Now that they're starting to implement that, is SQL Server perfect? It's done now, right? Your work is finished. You can retire and
That's
go on about
almost the question I was going to ask is, what do you want?
Yeah, what
do you want the most that didn't make it to Denali?
Well, for one, there are a bunch of other aspects of window functions that didn't make it.
Sure, this is like practically the first pass in SQL.
This kind of the second pass, right? Like you said, the ranking row numbers and so on were the first pass, and now this was in 2005, and now this is the second pass, and still there are a bunch of window functions concepts that are still missing. Like there is a window clause that allows you to take a window specification and reuse it in other functions. So imagine you have 5 functions and they have this kind of 3 lines defining the window with partitioning and ordering and framing, and you need the exact same specification in all 5. So now you have to repeat it, but the standard has a clause called window that allows you to say, let's name this particular specification W1.
Basically,
and then have
componentizing it, so you can plug it in.
Kind of, in a way, like a macro concept.
Right.
That let's call this part or the entire window specification W1, and then have a function that says sum whatever over W1 instead of starting to
like a CTE for function.
In a way,
yeah.
It's like a lot of things. My brain is trying to connect it to things too. Cool.
But so this is missing, and there are a bunch of other capabilities. We need more sophisticated range option that allows controlling in a more dynamic way which frame of rows we work with. So range requires an interval type that deals with temporal data that we're still missing in SQL Server. So without an interval, there can't be a truly very flexible range option for window functions. So this is another big area. And there's also a very, very cool kind of concept that both Oracle and IBM are trying to push into the standard, and I hope we will see it there in SQL Server eventually. It's a concept called the row pattern recognition that allows defining kind of a pattern that we want to identify in a sequence of rows. So think stocks. Find the first point where the stock value was greater than X and then lasted for so and so many days and then increased by whatever, and they use very kind of cool concept of regular expressions or semantics based on regular expressions that define whether we want to include the rest of the rows that satisfy the same condition or not. So use letters to define each segment in a way, and using regular expression kind of symbols you define whether you do or do not want extra elements in that segment or not. And then you can use this row pattern recognition concept to define a frame for window functions, to define a derived table for complex event processing, like the stream insight concept. So there are many, many kind of practical implications, both for streaming data and data at rest. So this is an effort that is being kind of hopefully made into the standard, and then I hope that SQL Server will include it as well. So there's quite a lot of very cool stuff out there that people are thinking about.
Is there anything that they've gotten wrong?
Gotten wrong?
Yeah, like they implemented a new feature and it's not implemented in the way it really should be. And I'm not talking about incomplete. I'm just saying, is there anything they're like, oh, that's not really what we meant?
Well, if you had gone to the bugger features,
that was in the booth.
Yeah.
No, but I mean there are a few, but I think the general direction is good. But what for me, I'll give 2 answers. Let's say first one is I was in the UK last weekend. There was very interesting kind of series of events. They called it SQL Relay, where they have lots of user groups now there. And then they had kind of a meeting in every group, and then they had a meeting with all kind of user group leaders and user group members and so on. And they did a very kind of entertaining bit where they gave the user group leaders, I think 2.5 minutes to present a topic. And they ran through the letters A through Z. So each had to give a kind of a small session about that letter. Like C was column order and so on. So like a bunch of, you know, tips until they went through all letters.
Okay,
and
what was Z?
Z.
I'm
That's
gonna
an
ask
interesting.
letters,
That's a brain bending concept.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe it was YZ. I don't remember. There was something there.
Okay,
But,
you were saying, I'm sorry.
yeah. So what for me was pleasantly surprising is to see that I think 75% of the tips were T-SQL related, and it's interesting to see that the bread and butter of what people do is basically T-SQL eventually. So obviously Microsoft wants to invent in all kinds of technologies and stuff to make SQL Server richer, but at the end of the day, what people do all the time is T-SQL. So to me, what's missing is a realization that the focus, or big part, of the focus should be T-SQL, and there needs to be a roadmap that currently is missing. Like feature here is implemented, feature there. Some of them very strong, very good, and so on. But I would love to see some kind of a roadmap that shows that we're planning in the next few years to implement what's very critically missing, that other platforms already support and standard SQL supports, and keep very strong investment in this area. That's to me what's missing. But anyway, that's one answer. The second one is interesting to see something that was added already in SQL Server 2005. It's not exactly wrong, but that Microsoft obviously often tries to implement features that exist in standard SQL according to the standard.
Sure.
Someone already went and thought about the functionality, the capabilities, and
Sure, you may as well
about
pursue that. Sure.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if you ever tried to look at the standard, but I'm using the standard all the time to see what they define for different features and what's not there in SQL Server and so on.
It can be thick.
Yeah, so it's very, very hard, let's say, to first of all interpret what is said there. Some of it is very kind of detailed and all kinds of acronyms that lead to other acronyms that lead to other acronyms, and it can be very tedious. But sometimes on a small feature I spend hours just to try and decipher what their intention is. But at any rate, so turns out that when Microsoft added the apply operator in SQL Server 2005, that there is a feature exactly like apply in standard SQL, but when Microsoft implemented it, they didn't know that standard SQL already has it. So
they thought they were being innovative.
Yeah, so the tricky part is if you know what you're looking for, if you know how the feature is named, then you do a search basically in this, 800 something page document. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's not that easy,
Sure.
Right.
So turns out that there is a feature in standard SQL called the lateral correlation that does exactly the same as apply does, but when Microsoft implemented apply, they didn't know it exists, so they kind of reinvented the wheel.
The answer name is actually better. It's more descriptive to me.
It's better and more descriptive, but it's a lot longer to type.
Yeah, but it's more.
No, it's actually you basically do a cross join of a correlated
I see.
subquery basically. The feature is called lateral correlation, and the concept is the same basically as what apply does.
Yeah.
But that's kind of amusing. But no, I would say that the general approach that there are really very, very good people there in for what my focus is the T-SQL programmability. That they have very, very good kind of spirit and focus, and I just hope to see more effort there. That from I would say the management side, more focus dedicated to the language part and what people ultimately care about, and some roadmap. That's what I would be very
Hear that,
glad to
Microsoft?
see.
It says you're not working hard enough.
No.
Yeah,
That's but
well,
from the
and you-
management side that allocates the resources, that decides, how much we spend on each, area and component to put more, let's say, in the language.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that strikes me when we go to keynotes and things, where we at the bloggers table, we're very critical. Oh, he should this, and oh, he should that.
Right.
And they're doing better this year as far as the message a couple of different things. One, there's been this big Azure push the last year or two.
Right.
And, frankly, the DBAs that don't care about it, we're sick of hearing about it. This is the first time we've ever heard them say, and I'm leading somewhere with this, this is the first time we've ever heard them say, you have options. Up till now, it's been, you will get in the cloud or you are finished in this field, mister. And so now they're talking about options and possibilities. Well, in the same way, they tend to focus on the big and the shiny, and here's a machine. And really, I haven't seen any focus in a very long time on any of the new T-SQL features. They don't get up there and demo in the keynote, look at this awesome new features, and that's the stuff.
And it's these little things that
that
are really
I'm really excited about.
But it's these little things too. And I was talking to, oh God, what the hell is his name? The new Dan Jones. I keep forgetting his name.
Yeah,
sorry, dude.
Sorry, dude.
Eddie Young, I think.
Eddie something.
But about they always got like their top 12 features that they really pimp. And it's always the little tiny things that nobody talks about that makes the biggest impact on your day
That
or on
gets
your project or something, right? It's like
try convert the data that
Yes.
value,
Yeah.
Yes,
Convert
exactly.
something and it shouldn't fail if it's not converted. But this is, for many developers, a very important tool.
Yeah.
But there's so much. And the beautiful thing in the language is that someone already went and thought about how it should be designed. So this part is something at least Microsoft doesn't need to worry about and just implement it.
There is no how do we do it. There's
Just
just
shut up and
you
do
guys
it.
go do
You
it.
just look pretty in code. So I want to switch tracks again real quick and go back to speaking. Because everybody has touted you as such a tremendous speaker this year. I still don't know why it's just hitting everybody all of a sudden this year.
Now, fair to see, we're getting back into the Ass Kiss portion of the show.
No, I'm not.
But it's you're kind of the star of the show. We'll say more or less. We're one of the top tier guys every year. So I don't know why you're acting all surprised.
Well,
I'm
because
paying
he's
too, by the way.
Lots of money.
No, because he speaks every year, and everybody loves his sessions.
But you were saying.
But I haven't ever heard anybody go, wow, he is really polished, and he is really this. And everybody just loves your sessions, but everybody's actually specifically commenting on that this year. So I want to ask two things. And first of all, do you have a pre-speaking ritual? Do you still get nervous when you go on? And do you have? Is there anything that makes you that you go through that makes you feel better that you have to do?
No, I always get nervous. It used to be much stronger, let's say 10 years ago, but I still get nervous and looking forward for the thing to finish when I can relax.
Yeah.
But it becomes kind of less and less of. At the beginning, it was really very, very hard. I remember the first PAS conference, I didn't sleep for like 3 days in a row. Before my session, I took 4, double espressos and drank them after not sleeping a few days and put my head in a bucket of ice and stuff like that. So it's not that bad, but still it's nervous. But I think nowadays it's a more healthy kind of nervous.
Right.
And there's no ritual. The one thing I remember that one of my teachers in the past, I asked him for advice in this area, and he said, think whenever you go to speak or something like this, just like it's another day in the office. When you go up, you say, it's another day in the office, So some time you're talking with people about stuff that you like, and it helps.
Yeah.
And as a speaker, that's when you start to really get into your groove, is when you're talking about something you're excited about.
Right. Yeah. And what really helps is when people ask questions. So when people ask questions, you feel like they're interested and they're engaged, and you're responding and you're focusing on their stuff. So that's very helpful. The part that's very hard is when people are very quiet, And
we had an entire conference recently where each of us gave 2 sessions and just quiet, no
Right.
matter what. And we're very interactive, and we're like, all right, who wants to? And that's got to be. There you go. Is there a noticeable difference in the interaction of audiences, like around America or in different parts of the world? Is there like?
Oh, for sure, there's.
Like this city never speaks, or what have you?
Yes, actually, there's certain places in the world the culture is different. So yeah, in the US, for example, people are not too engaged, but enough engaged. I would say they're just about right. For example, in Israel, it's too many questions. It's I would speak and not pass maybe third of the planned content.
Which is
very
session,
nice.
so go for it, right?
It's okay, but I'm saying that I think in the US the audience is just about right in terms of enough interactive, but letting you, do your thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I like it very much with that volume. Yeah.
Okay. So the second half of my question, if she'll shut up,
You shut up.
is what advice can you give to speakers to become more polished and to get the kind of rave reactions that you get? What do you do? What do you think you do that's different other than just
you
knowing
start
what
by
you're doing?
teaching for 13 years, which is your answer.
I'm really not sure what's the right advice because I
Yeah,
never
well,
took I never took those classes of how to speak and how to teach, and not because it's not a good idea to do it, because I don't respond to them very well. So I
Right.
just do my thing,
I mean, you just
But
naturally like this.
I don't know. Maybe. No, but perhaps I would say as long as what you're dealing with is something that you really, really love, and not that you put yourself in a position just because this particular topic is supposed to do well, So some people choose their tracks, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but you
Yeah.
typically choose your career path based on what you think that is worthwhile investing in. But you want to also stick to what you really, really like, and if that's something that you're passionate about, then it will be kind of natural, It will go out naturally, I guess. You speak about it, you like it, and people don't need to feel
Time's up, bye.
the break in the same.
So is there anything else on you that's going to beat the
You've got an implant.
Yeah.
On the same note, we just, I'm here, I'm going to toot my own. It's Ask Kiss for me now. I just was at the MVP Authors, the Deep Dive signing. This is my first publication, is a chapter in the book, so I'm really, really excited about it. Thank you. But I wanted to ask you, you had, a book or two in your time. Are you working on anything right now, for one?
Yeah, actually, about a month ago, I finished a whole book just about window functions.
No kidding!
Yeah.
Wait, is this a scoop?
That was not planned.
That's a scoop.
Oh my god! Sorry, that's really, really
Take
cool.
that kid credit.
When will you give it to
Yes,
me?
I'm just holding it until the product will be released because I want to check all the code.
Yeah, she's,
Yeah.
It's done.
No, that's
And now I'm
fantastic.
working on the
If
others.
you want, we could totally look over it.
Sure.
Just send it on, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
But you see that the topic is that big. I mean.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's MS Press?
MS Press, yeah.
About how many pages? Give it.
It was, I think, something like 300 or close to 300 pages. Yeah. And Adam Mechanic, you probably know Adam Mechanic is the
Yeah, like
technical
this.
editor of the book.
Okay.
Very cool.
So he knows his sequel, obviously. And
Yeah.
I was very glad he agreed to edit it. And then I'm working on the next series, the fundamentals book needs to get upgraded, querying book.
So I was gonna that goes into something else I wanted to ask earlier.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. What, for stealing my question? Is there a book
No.
that you want to write that you just haven't had time to, or may not have time to, that I mean, because windowing function, absolutely great. I agree, right? But is there an aspect of SQL that you really want to write about, but just haven't had time?
Yeah, so I would say the one before getting the T-SQL querying book out, I really wanted a book that contains kind of three parts. One, the mathematical foundation to the language, and then the language itself and the optimization, kind of the three layers. And I'm not a mathematician, so I wanted someone that really knows his math to write this, and we did get this out. So the last T-SQL querying book for the 2008 edition, we had Steve Cass, who I don't know if you know him, he used to be an MVP until recently. He teaches mathematics at Drew University, and he covered two very, very interesting elements. One is set theory and predicate logic very deeply, not just the parts that are specifically applicable to SQL, but beyond. And also an entire chapter about algorithmic complexity, that nowadays people do a lot of tuning, but a lot of this kind of guesswork and intuition and so on. And if you understand the complexity concepts from computer science, how algorithms scale, then you can track iterators in the execution plan for each, figure out this one scales linearly, this one has n square scaling, this one has n log n scaling. So if you understand this topic, you can very well predict basically how a query that works with some test data that has, 1 million rows how will it scale when you get into a production environment with 100 million rows? People make assumptions that it's going to be linear always. Like if it's 1 second against 1 million rows, it's going
It
to
ran
be
fast on my box.
yeah.
100 million seconds.
Yeah, so but it doesn't work like
No,
this,
it
right? It's
doesn't.
far more complicated. So I really wanted this kind of, I really wanted to read this kind of book, and with good people that each specializes in their field. You know, we had Steve Kass covering the math part, we had Dan Sarka covering relational modeling related concepts, and I think it turned out a book that I always wanted to read. You know?
Yeah. There was another book on database math that was released by A Press, and this was 2 or 3 years ago, give or take. And it covers all that set stuff, right? And I work with a guy who is like a PhD in astrophysics from MIT, and he's a programmer now, right?
Right.
And so I gave him this book because he's a big math guy, right? I gave him this book, and he read through it in just a couple hours, and he just tore through it. He goes, yeah, it's not really very accurate mathematically. I mean, I get the concepts they were kind of going for, but you know, mathematically it didn't really stand up and all of this, but you really have to be a mathematician to know that, right?
Right.
So
so the thing with SQL is that you don't have to be a mathematician to get to write good SQL, but if you do have some affinity to mathematics, then you can kind of dig deeper into the roots. It's very interesting. And I think Steve did a fantastic job in this area. The other book that I really love, that it's not that I would want to write, but exists, you know, is by Chris Date. He has a book about SQL and relational theory. And it's interesting that, you know, SQL is based on mathematical roots, but in many ways it contradicts basically the model that is supposed to be based on. So Date gets very, very nicely into the areas that explain in what ways SQL is non-relational and how can you use it in a relational way. You know?
Right.
So, you know, we keep talking about the fact that SQL is based on set theory, but the set has no duplicates, for example, but SQL allows duplicates. You can create a table without a key.
Of course.
That's where the based on comes in, kind of like you see a movie that's based on a book, it's nothing like
Right.
it. It has the same title. There you go.
Right. Yeah, but it's interesting. So you see, you can create a table without primary key, you have duplicates. Let's say you enforce a key, so no duplicates, now it's a relation, but then you do a query that says select country from customers, and you get duplicate countries, obviously. So the result is not a set. It's not relational, basically.
Right.
But the language does give you enough tools, like a distinct clause, and you know, if you understand what is truly relational and what's not relational, you know how to use the language in a relational way. So it's a strongly recommended book. I really enjoyed reading it. It's called the SQL and Relational Theory.
Relational theory, yeah.
So for people that look for how do I understand well the language and how to think in SQL and relational terms, also is a beautiful kind of book for this purpose.
I've read a couple of his other titles, and
Oh, thank you.
I've read a couple of Date's other titles, and they're just fascinating reads. And sometimes a bit over my head because I'm more of an admin than a dev, right? But they're just he explains things so clearly sometimes that even I go, wow, how come nobody else has ever said this to me, right? I mean,
and it's so interesting to see how, you know, the way we learn stuff is not in this kind of linear process. You know, people like to think that I go to this book, that book, and then I have everything.
What is the roadmap?
Yeah. And in reality, it's more like you pick up things here and there, and gradually kind of develop more and more knowledge around those kind of islands of knowledge in a way.
right.
And for many people, you know, walking, let's say, 10 years with SQL, and then going back to those more fundamental kind of books, like Chris Date's books and so on, and suddenly things start clicking, you know, starting to make sense. It's nice. It's very nice about the language that you start working with it and you can start writing queries, you know, in a couple of weeks, but then truly understanding it can take a lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a very nice thing about it.
Yeah, it took me a long time to understand every single thing about SQL Server.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
glad I'm
not-
past that.
I'm a very big believer that you won't understand anything until you're ready. And I have proven this so many times where early on in my career, I would just memorize facts, right, out of BOL and whatnot. Just memorize tables of numbers, right? This is that, that's that, that's that. But it was years later to where I truly understood what that actually meant, right? And how many times have you read something and gone, big deal, right? And then read it again like a year later and gone, yeah, still no big deal. And they come back to it 3 years later and go, oh, that's what it means, right? You need, the experience and the seasoning and the something to understand true wisdom, right? So I really believe that you really don't understand something until you're actually ready for it. And
play a lot with it and take your time with it and not rush things. I see some people making comments about reading books and I read it in 4 days.
Yeah, I know, right? Out of it, then.
They maybe read it in 4 days, but there's no way they absorb the material.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing conversations. Someone says, "I read this book in 4 days," and someone else, but it took me 1.5 months, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
The 1.5 months is a much better kind of approach. So take your time, play with it, try it, understand it. It's.
That's one of the things that I was going to ask you. It's a nice tie-in. You're, I think we talked about this before. You're pretty much full-time speaker. You don't, or do you?
Teacher, I would say.
Teacher. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I have to say, the speaking is the part I like less, just because of all of the kind of stress around the thing. But what I really love is teaching. That's what I do most of the time. It's
but
more classrooms.
You don't rush off on the weekend and teach and then come back to your 8 a.m. I'm going to sit down and tune a database job.
No, I'm afraid my day is usually teaching, and after hours the writing parts and some other projects. We're working on courseware and other projects. So it's like 2 jobs basically. The day job is the part I like, and the night job is. I would say enabling the part that I like.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, how difficult is that to keep up with like all the new features and how this is affected in production and so forth when you don't have a live production instance out there and business problems coming at you?
Yeah. So first of all, here and there I do visit live production environments, even though I like it less than the teaching part. I've seen sometimes my arm get twisted, but also there are lots of opportunities to get to all the collection of problems that people report from everywhere, basically through news groups or forums and things like this, and very great resource to see the stuff that people basically work with every day, concentrated in this one place. So, and people sending emails and asking questions and internal discussions in our company. We have 150 people in solid queue, and every day someone comes up with this problem with the customer and these challenges and so on. People discuss it within the company. So, yeah, and it's not like you're in a place where you're trying to learn other things. It's like what I do all the time. It's interesting and it's engaging and working on it all the time, not just to prepare for some kind of a session or some kind of a book or some kind of a course. Just what I live and breathe. So when it gets to talking about it or to writing about it or teaching about it, it's, like you're explaining your day in a way.
Yeah. So you kind of get to support production without all the BS. Production.
I support 10 million productions. So
absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's time because we still need time to. Our next one's downstairs, right?
Yeah, it is.
So we need time to get down and set up. We got Mark Souza next.
Okay. But the last question is there anything that you wanted to talk about on here? Is there any announcement, discussion? Please use your full zip codes.
No, nothing special. I'd just like to thank you for having me.
No, we absolutely love getting together with you. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it a yearly thing.
All right.
So just pencil us in every year.
All right.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'll shut it off.
You shut it off.
You don't do it right.
Yeah.
See?